What human being has killed the most people without knowing it? And the most amazing part? The Romans knew it was bad for you. The Roman architect Vitruvius wrote, "Water conducted through earthen pipes is more wholesome than that through lead, indeed that conveyed in lead must be injurious, because from it white lead is obtained, and this is said to be injurious to the human system. Hence, if what is generated from it is pernicious, there can be no doubt that itself cannot be a wholesome body. This may be verified by observing the workers in lead, who are of a pallid color, for in casting lead, the fumes from it fixing on the different members, and daily burning them, destroy the vigor of the blood. Water should therefore on no account be conducted in leaden pipes if we are desirous that it should be wholesome. That the flavor of that conveyed in earthen pipes is better, is shown at our daily meals, for all those whose tables are furnished with silver vessels, nevertheless use those made of earth, from the purity of the flavor being preserved in them." He then goes on to detail how to make lead pipes. It's called retsina, and it's still a very popular drink in Greece. I like it, though it is a bit of an acquired taste compared to normal wine. It's commonly thought to be due to an older practice where the resin was used to seal wine amphorae for longevity, but people got used to the taste it infused into the wine even after barrels eliminated the need for it. Not to be confused with another Greek resin-based food item, mastic, which is a type of resin normally used to flavor confectionaries, baked goods, and other dessert items. Fun fact to redeem this guy slightly. He introduced CFC refrigerants for refrigeration at a time when all the ones used were toxic, flammable, or explosive, so whilst he didn't know about the high ozone depletion potential, ODP, and global warming potential, GWP, of these CFC gases, he thought he was doing us a favor, and may have saved many lives in doing this. Further to this, the alternatives to CFC had far higher GWP than CFC refrigerants. PFC refrigerants, considered viable to use at the time, is 100x worse and would have accelerated global warming by decades. Thomas introducing CFC refrigerants may have at least slowed down the effects of climate change, which were due to inevitable changing of the refrigerants used. Some of them are poorly executed for sure, but technical skill wasn't really the main issue. The problem was that his art was profoundly dull. Mostly just sterile landscapes or architecture. Obviously, in hindsight, it's kind of a fascinating glimpse into his psyche that the art he wanted to create was largely devoid of human life or individual spirit, but in the context of actually being an artist, his work was more suited to being on postcards or as some inoffensive decoration. Definitely not the high art he aspired to. There are definitely a few famous examples of pieces that had fucked up perspectives or lighting or whatever, but these were more the exception than the rule. But these are the ones talked about the most, so people come away with the impression that he was genuinely bad at art. But in fact most of his paintings and sketches were fine. They were just soulless and boring, was the issue. I disagree. His ability to carry out such inhumane acts demonstrates not a burning emotional hatred, but a soulless lack of human compassion and empathy. Someone who sees people of certain religions or proclivities as so far below human that they deserve to be exterminated could certainly not understand the emotions that a well-adjusted person could, let alone create art that elicits them. It makes more sense if you think of him as not someone driven by hatred and burning passion, but a sociopath that thinks nothing more of human life than he does cockroaches. I would be interested in reading more about that, and a quick Google search didn't turn anything up about thieves. Do you mind pasting a link? Edit, I found this Wikipedia page. Mythology. The usual story declares that a group of thieves during a European plague outbreak were robbing the dead or the sick. When they were caught, they offered to exchange their secret recipe, which had allowed them to commit the robberies without catching the disease, in exchange for leniency. Another version says that the thieves had already been caught before the outbreak and their sentence had been to bury dead plague victims. To survive this punishment, they created the vinegar. The city in which this happened is usually said to be Marseille or Toulouse, and the time period can be given as anywhere between the 14th and 18th century depending on the storyteller. Pretty much. His whole thing was making the claim that the MMR vaccine caused autism, which at the time was being given to most young children in the UK. His conclusion was that having the 3 vaccines in separate jabs would be safer. The fact that he'd recently got involved with a company that was ready and willing to roll out these individual vaccines and therefore stood to make a lot of money if the NHS started buying them was probably strongly related. Giving maximum benefit of the doubt, I assume he wasn't absolutely homicidally indifferent to causing a fall in vaccination rates. After all, his whole thing was that you should take the different vaccine that his company would sell. But in all the scrutiny and hysteria, the fact that he was simply trying to peddle a different jab got lost in the media storm, and he became the poster child of a massive anti-scientific movement that continues to argue that he was silenced for telling the truth. Thomas Midgley, Jr. May 18, 1889 to November 2, 1944, an American chemist, developed the tetraethyl lead, TEL, additive for gasoline and chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, and held over 100 patents. While lauded for his discoveries during his time, today his legacy is seen as far more mixed considering the serious negative environmental impacts of these innovations. One historian remarked that Midgley had more impact on the atmosphere than any other single organism in Earth's history. Dude created leaded gasoline and the gas for car AC. Both of which have the cumulative environmental impact that will haunt the world for untold years. The poisoning of leaded gas fumes has had health effects on inner-city people for decades. William Stevenson. He was a representative for the British Security Coordination and was tasked with creating a British intelligence network stretching throughout the Western Hemisphere during WW II. He became a close advisor to Roosevelt, eventually advising him on expanding the US's intelligence capabilities. This recommendation manifested itself as the OSS, which then later evolved into the CIA. If Stevenson didn't make that recommendation to Roosevelt, while it is likely it would have happened regardless, who knows how many thousands of people would not have been killed as a result of covert action operations in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Korea, Guatemala, Afghanistan, etc. Thomas Midgley Jr., 1889 to 1944. He was an American chemist who invented both leaded petrol/gasoline and CFC/Freon. New Scientist recently described him as a one-man environmental disaster, and he's the only person to feature twice in Time's 50 Worst Inventions list. He contracted polio in 1940 and devised a complex series of pulleys to lift himself out of bed unattended. Perhaps inevitably given his penchant for negative side effects, this invention went wrong and killed him by strangulation. Gonna get a lot of hate for this. But fuck it. Religion. It has killed hundreds of millions throughout mankind's history. I myself am a Norse pagan. Though to get to Valhalla or Folkvangr, one must die in combat and live a life of fame and glory. However, it's not needed. Helheim, which is ruled by hell, is where, what I believe, most people go. No one needs to kill someone else or should even be fighting in wars unless a justified cause were to be the case. Helheim is a place of green grass and where many find peace. Hate me for being different. I don't care. But there should never be a thing intolerance to others just because of a different belief. Oliver Evans. In 1785 Evans built the automatic flour mill, which started the bulk handling of goods. Evans's mill used a leather belt bucket elevator, screw conveyors, canvas belt conveyors, and other mechanical devices to completely automate the process of making flour. This technology spread, first to other flour makers, then breweries. Other food businesses used Evans' innovation, from canning to meat processing, until Henry Ford was inspired by what he witnessed at slaughterhouses to create the assembly line. The assembly line has made it affordable to put devices of medium, micro, or mass destruction into virtually every hand in the world. We all have immediate easy access to death on varying scales thanks to Ford. 1.35 million people are killed each year in car accidents alone, and Ford's innovation is used in far more industries. That also doesn't include air pollution, which kills an estimated 10 million people each year. Not really that related, but the guy, I refuse to call him a doctor, who decided to test if vaccines cause autism, and he tested on about 11 people. Normally for tests like that they would maybe get at least over 10,000, I don't know, but way more than 11, and most of the patients already had autism, and he concluded that vaccines cause autism, which is incredibly bullsh*t, and I hope he knows about all the tiny children who died of easily treatable diseases that could be treated by vaccines, and I hope he does. In a cell in prison with loads of pictures of child coffins around him. Western religions have killed more people than anything in history by a wide margin. Yet if white European history is the only history that matters, sure. Look at this list. Numerous conflicts have claimed much higher kill count than the Crusades. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/list_of_wars_and disasters_by_death_toll. However, if you do want to make the claim that Western religion have killed more people than anything else in history, the Taiping Rebellion would be a much better example than the Crusades. Though I doubt most Western churches would recognize a crazy guy calling himself Jesus's brother a real part of Western religion. What? No. I hate Facebook. Woodrow Wilson literally is the reason for this stuff because of his choices during his presidency. But anyway, let's start with his biggest decision, waiting to join World War I. Had he joined in 1915 when the Lusitania was sunk, something he likely could have used as a clause to bring the US into World War I, the war would have been over in mid-1917. This would lead to Germany either being broken so badly that there would be literally no conceivable way for it to return under Hitler or Hitler-like figure, or the treaty would be less harsh and lead to Germany not feeling the need for a Nazi ESC thing. As for Russia, the February Revolution would happen, but not the October Revolution. This would lead to no rise of communism. Basically what I'm saying is Wilson should have just done what Theodore would have done and joined World War I in 1915. Andrew Wakefield. Or Wayne Wheeler, author of the 18th Amendment. Up to the 1920s, car engines were very weak. They had low compression, so straight gasoline was fine. In the 20s, engines became more powerful. With higher compression. Pure gasoline would cause the engine to knock, which is caused by the gas igniting before it was supposed to, which can damage your engine. There were two substances on the table to add to gas to increase octane levels and stop NOx. Lead or ethanol. Government said no to ethanol because prohibition, so lead was added to gas. They didn't stop selling leaded gas in the US completely till the 1990s. What lead was replaced with wasn't much better, Tex, which is a carcinogen. In Brazil, there was an Celcium 173 case, not sure if I got the name right, that an guy and his friend found and scrapped an hospital machine that used an radioactive compound, and they were like, let's keep this cool shiny thing, and gave it on to friends, family. One of the confirmed deaths cause of the compound was in child. That are some of it. I think 190 people died, but I'm not sure. There are also an whopping 280 or more cases that aren't proved but are most likely to be from the same compound from the machine. When Alfred Nobel, who invented dynamite, lost his brother Ludwig in 1888, the newspaper mistakenly printed his obituary instead. The headline read, "The Merchant of Death is dead." It went on to trash Alfred for becoming rich by finding a way to kill people faster than ever before in creating dynamite, which the world's militaries had weaponized and used to kill unknown thousands during the Spanish-American War. Upon reading his own obituary, Alfred set about trying to change his legacy. He changed his will in order to set aside a large portion of his estate to create 5 prizes given out in different categories, one of which was awarded for the pursuit of peace. The Nobel Prizes are a result of one man trying to change his image, and it largely has done, for now we think of Alfred Nobel as a visionary and leader in sciences and not the merchant of death he was thought of in his time. I'd say those fuckers that invented tetraethylene and then spent the modern-day equivalent of billions if not trillions of dollars to discredit any scientist who pointed out it had negative health impacts and that ethanol could do the same thing for preventing engine knock without causing irreparable brain damage. Victims of lead poisoning end up more prone to violent tendencies, which means that the effects of this poison can never fully be measured, but violent crime as a whole has gone down significantly since they pulled this dangerous chemical from gas. I remember hearing about a room in a South African hospital where every single patient would die. Numerous patients one after the other would be placed in this one room would die. Turns out there was this one cleaning lady who would work with headphones on and while mopping the floors would catch the life support plug and accidentally pull it. This went on till they installed security cameras and caught her doing it. After they notified her of what she had been doing, she resigned in horror of what she did. Eli Whitney. By inventing the cotton gin, meant to reduce the amount of labor to separate cotton from unwanted plant parts, he greatly increased the demand for slavery and increased sectionalism. By popularizing interchangeable parts, he paved the way for the mass production of weapons, which would allow for one of the bloodiest wars in history, and the bloodiest war in American history. All for inventing labor-saving devices. From Wikipedia. Language Watch. Edit. Thomas Midgley Jr. May 18, 1889 to November 2, 1944, was an American mechanical and chemical engineer. He played a major role in developing leaded gasoline, tetraethylene, and some of the first chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, better known in the United States by the brand name Freon. Both products were later banned from common use due to concerns about their impact on human health and the environment. He was granted more than 100 patents over the course of his career. The New Scientist called him a one-man environmental disaster. 2-3. I'm guessing Genghis Khan or Stalin. Khan's empire spanned most of Asia, and he didn't acquire it by being nice. He basically killed a lot of people, and gave the rest the option of joining him or also dying. Totals for Khan are probably in the millions, or at least hundreds of thousands just from the size of his territorial expanse. It could be less due to the population sizes of the time. As for Stalin, his actions are credited with as many as 20 million dead officially, and as much as 80 million unofficially. This came from his Socialist Party seizing complete control of Russia and eliminating political dissenters by force. Situations like this are why we have rights. Stalin was not the first to do such things.